Good day. This is the address to the United Planetary for the year 2021. This is the first time that I have the privilege of addressing your prestigious forum. My greetings to the members of the United Planetary. In preparing this speech, I took a moment to reread my 3 previous renditions and was overwhelmed noticing the developments that have taken place in such a short period of time. Let us face it, we are confronted by problems that date at least 2,000 years, mostly without change, and yet here we are noticing a plethora of activities. This is perhaps an indication of better cooperation among all of us, or perhaps better communication capabilities facilitated by technological evolution, or at worst our reactions to events resulting from the target dates of our enemies reaching maturity. For 2,000 years, we have been progressing in a direction that has not been of our choosing, inevitably moving towards destruction and non-existence. And yet in 3 short years, that trend has changed direction towards hope for a sustainable future. Let us face it, there are few of us today that believe the destruction of stars in our skies have been accidental or fortuitous. This constant blowing up of stars has been a deliberate strategy towards debilitating the very structure of the galaxies in order to facilitate their collapse into nothing. Sadly, we are led to believe that examples of the destruction can be found all around us. As a matter of fact, to my amazement, this very morning it came to my attention that there are areas of the galaxy where communities are limited to the use of star gas for light and warmth in exclusivity. The horror of that notion. Talk about unsustainable energy sources. And this done under the banner of law and justice, a form of penalty that the judiciary is certainly eager to evaluate. Who would think that a penalty so destructive could have any legitimacy in a legal context? I must confess that even though relieving noticing positive developments in issues affecting all of us, it is unfortunately clear that we have not overcome yet. And some of the problems are still very much with us, affecting our lives and our communities. As I have expressed before, we are confronting a situation that even though it has been part of our history, it has not been recorded as such and needs to be reassessed anew without much of a frame of reference, and this adds to the challenge. In my address to the forum, In my address to your forum of the year 2019, I expressed my concern over the fact that regardless of new developments, I remain worried for our future in the realization that the same intelligence that brought the black holes to us could be looking for new elements to destabilize our space environment. I imagine my sadness when confronted with the sumidero. I have hoped that the page we turn by stabilizing the black holes would be the last page on environmental catastrophes, and yet I found myself confronted with my fears when a part of the sky itself collapsed to give birth to the aberration that we call a sumidero. While a black hole is formed by a star that blows up, a sumidero is the result of many stars destroyed at once. In hearing of this happening, I was under the impression that this was an accidental consequence of an act of terror. We know lasers were involved. Yet since then we have learned that this sumidero is not the first in the cosmos. It is with gladness that I can tell you at this time that we have made concerted progress in the direction of stabilizing this new horror. It is with elation that I share that the lessons we learned with regard to black holes have proven invaluable in decreasing the seriousness of this new menace. We have learned that a section of the sky nearby that is independent from our part of the sky and used to be 3 times bigger was plagued by these aberrations while trying to stabilize and regain control of their own area. They have presently been reduced to a third of our size and still have to overcome 12 sumideros. Today, they are also trying to deploy some of our techniques, and they have assisted our efforts by employing salt, facilitating ionization. We can only be hopeful at how much more can be accomplished when working in cooperation with others. Also in this context, I would like to highlight something that would be especially significant for our local communities. It has come to my attention that Jesus of Nazareth himself contributed a paper in the subject of black holes during his lifetime. Apparently, he would have referred to the phenomenon by the use of the word sumidero rather than black hole. But we have borrowed that word to define a tear in the sky containing many stars rather than one. I am highlighting this hoping to avoid confusion in this matter. He has been credited with organizing a task team towards researching the problem of these tears in the sky. He also is credited with managing this team that included people from other parts of the sky. And finally, he also funded the effort. Under his leadership, they produced a paper that defines the concept of singularity, a black hole reduced to its minimal expression by ionization. It was apparently Miss Morgana that translated this paper into galactic English from Sanskrit. These procedures, while not solving the problem, certainly went a long way to lessen the situation and gave the communities affected time in which to assess their options. Evacuation, for example. I must actually clarify that this exercise was undertaken 2,000 years ago. Unfortunately, the effort was discredited a bit on account of some explosions that were recorded as accidental, but I suspected as deliberate sabotage when confronted with people spraying explosive chemicals at the site of the sumidero. I would not be surprised if this deplorable cowardly has been the cause of those earlier explosions. Our experts are investigating and analyzing the chemical and its origins. Even though it's still early days, and even though this environmental disaster has cost us the lives of so many dedicated, competent colleagues that found themselves trapped in the pool of the sumidero, accepting the horror of the realization that nothing and no one could get them back, regardless of all that sadness, we have the right to feel hopeful as we were able to turn a page and the problem seems to be slowly shedding. Once again, I would like to stress the important role economic forces play in this overall situation. and the fact that it should still be in everyone's best interest to pay attention to developments in that front. It was while investigating the financial blockages that we became aware of the constellation of the Mayflower as a vortex in centralizing the laundering of money outside our area of the sky. The term laundering refers to the legitimizing of money acquired through illegal means. And it was in following the inflows and outflows of money, as well as in the patterns of expenditure, that we were beginning to grasp some of the logic in the situation. As we were trying to deploy some of our people to the area for the purpose of perusing financial records, disaster struck, and part of the sky collapsed, resulting in the formation of that gigantic aberration that we call a sumidero. Since then, some efforts have been made to collapse several other areas of the sky by someone trying to avoid being charged with the first aberration, never mind hiring a lawyer. It should be noted and praised the prompt reaction of some of the soldier ant communities in different areas of the sky that were instrumental in responding to these aggressions and safeguarding our homes. We all feel inspired by the many others that rose to this challenge and made themselves available at a moment's notice in trying to restore order. It should be noted that the attention of the communities in our galaxy was directed towards an attack on the old empire, and while this was in progress, the constellation of the Mayflower was attacked unnoticed, as well as several other critical targets. It is pertinent to notice that the attack on the area of the old empire would have been meant as a distraction from the real targets, and this is consistent with the modus operandi of the attackers. It is my understanding that many years ago a community moved into the area of the Mayflower attracted by the affluence of the whole area of the sky. That happened many years ago and resulted in the displacement of the original communities that were there. In the more recent past, they were themselves targeted by another community of the same species, probably jealous of that better standard of living. The second time the sky was attacked by these newcomers, when the soldier ants were instrumental in defending the one community, the one community was impersonating the other in an effort to pass on the blame, in what resulted in extensive loss of lives for their communities in our areas. This was unfortunate because it wasted the time of the people engaged in defending the area, and it resulted in the community that was uninvolved being attacked, while their leadership has had a history of trying to cooperate with the rest of our communities. I still wonder what could be in those financial records that would justify these excesses. Since then, we have secured the records which have been distributed to different centers around the universe, and hopefully we will soon have some answers. Often enough, things that are critical for some lack substance from others' perspectives. This is probably the most critical aspect of the events of the last year. As I mentioned in my address of the year 2020, we were aware of efforts towards damaging the stability of the universe itself by sabotaging the integrity of its magnetic fields, and reached the conviction that our enemies could collapse the sky itself if we are careless. As I pointed out in the year 2019 on making inquiries regarding the blockages in our banking and financial systems, and even the pursuit of widespread poverty, I learned that they are means of ensuring the capacity to influence the shameful trade of the flesh of our compatriots as food items. I funded research towards facilitating a change-over in diet for some of the meat-eating species and gained insight into their difficulties in this regard. I myself managed a transition from meat-eating to a vegetarian diet with little difficulties almost 20 years ago. But they point out my diet was never exclusive meat. This comment is accurate. My diet had always included other items, like fruits and vegetables and several other food items. It was their limitation in being able to imitate this that guided to my funding research towards assisting them to overcome the problem. All in all, the progress has been small, but measurable in this direction. There certainly seems to be a measure of cooperation. Yes. And yet, in view of the new developments, I find it difficult to believe that any of our neighbors would wish to endorse this state of affairs. I cannot believe that some of them would consider these financial strategies worthwhile pursuing for the sake of ensuring a supply of food items when confronted with the reality of losing their homes. The activities in perpetuating poverty are getting on everyone's capacity to respond effectively to this crisis. Please take notice and reassess. We have in the past stressed the right to life, which is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that it is my understanding we share with others in the sky, and that presumes health and suggests at the very least to our capacity to take care of ourselves. Health requires access to healthy food, and taking care of ourselves generally requires that we are able to pay for our shelter and other necessities. It was in reassessing my previous renditions before your forum that I realized the enormity of the task that confront us with regards to health. The issues that come to mind, some of them issues that we share with the rest of you, are impressive and oppressive. Radioactivity, for example. The exposure to radiation resulting from nuclear reactions has had a crippling effect on many of our communities without dwelling on the deteriorating effect on our collective health and consequences to our fertility, often leading to sterility, and in some cases to the extinction of entire communities. As I was trying to strategize ways of lobbying towards the phasing out of radioactive facilities polluting our area, COVID broke out, and I realized I had to leave the issue of radioactivity aside because the whole community was too overwhelmed by this epidemic to be able to focus on the malady of nuclear radiation. That is something we have carried for many years. Yes, familiarity breeds contempt, but there is no denying there is a need to take a stand. How can we embrace the right to life and to a healthy environment in the wake of these developments? The consideration is almost humorous. The COVID epidemic has been a painful and costly affair, and I mean costly in lives. People have perished to this disease from all walks of life, ages, and financial standing. It has been tragic. And just when we thought things could not get worse, it surfaced that we are confronting an invasion of larvae in our open areas that coincidentally feed on bacteria. We need to be grateful for our medical personnel that were able to assist with vaccines, among other things enabling many of us to try and leave this bad experience behind. Still, in the issue of health, I feel compelled to raise something we call chicoria, which is related to the financial deprivation that we have mentioned earlier, except that chicoria refers to the peddling of money at cents level. It is offensive, demoted, and degrading. As a matter of fact, I would like to quote once again from my piece, Nora Rasenti on military issues. Never in the history of our planet have the lives of people been treated with such indifference. When it comes to military personnel, this attitude consolidates to tragic legitimacy. Our people are appreciated and cherished, and are certainly not numbers on a board. I wrote this quote in the year 2017 and have to concede that this problem is still with us. In my address of the year 2020, I borrow another quote from former President B. Obama. And we remain hopeful that the future generations will acknowledge our commitment to safeguard and pass on to them the gift of freedom. In this regard, our area has tried to make strides in actualizing and regularizing the many that have been affected through the years. There is still a long and winding road before us, but we are confident that we shall achieve our objectives of bringing up to date and modernizing our local justice structures, and look forward to being able to assist and make contributions to other judiciaries should opportunity arise. I would like to quote once again from former U.S. President Obama's inaugural speech, that we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some, but also our collective failure to make hard choices and prepare the nation for a new age. Homes have been lost, jobs shed, businesses shuttered. Our healthcare is too costly, our schools fail too many, and each day brings further evidence that the ways we use energy strengthen our adversaries and threaten our planet. We can no longer overlook the threats around us, threats we have not provoked or invited. Our extended environment is in mortal danger, and it is critical that we put aside differences so that we can confront these dangers with some hope of overcoming the situation. I have a degree of confidence born of our capacity to overcome the black holes and the sumidero, but there is no denying the road ahead is not without hurdles. I would also like to know more about those destabilizing our areas. I would like to understand what motivates their actions. It is difficult negotiating difficult to establish negotiating structures in the dark, but our efforts have not been rewarded with success so far. Among the hurdles is their capacity to spread confusion. As a matter of interest, it has come to my attention that Mr. Salvador Harding has been experiencing some difficulties, and he requested that I include the following disclaimer. It has come to my attention I am impersonated in some parts of the galaxy and would appreciate friends and associates to be mindful and make sure they are dealing with me and not with an enemy emulating my speech and dressing styles. I would also appreciate being informed whenever this surfaces. I was originally taken aback by the realization that this strategy is so widespread, but was elated by the opportunity to highlight a problem that I have myself confronted and other friends and associates. Please be mindful of impersonators, especially when their actions seem reckless or out of character. In my previous speech, we also touched on the issue of Harry Seldon's plan, and I'm hopeful that we will get some insights from the people that seem excited and eager to factor in some of the developments concerning the galaxy. I would certainly appreciate their input. I'm including a timeline for the year 2020 because I hope it would help shed further light to some of the events that have unfolded. All the issues that I'm itemizing in the timeline relate to space in some way. I also think it helps to conceptualize the events regarding the sumidero in the constellation of the Mayflower more effectively. Timeline of the year 2021, January. It was during this month of January that the Tyrannosaurus Rex community set up blockades and attacked every ship trying to land in our planet, and also presented war papers. These actions apparently related to efforts towards encouraging the Rex community to return to this part of the sky, to their part of the sky. Yes. February. There were attempts from Andromeda towards collapsing the central section of our sky. Glaxo tries to establish a monopoly on pharmaceuticals under the leadership of its MD, Mr. Prince Philip. Yes. March. Adam makes plus Jesus accounts plus Mayflower. This is a connection to the money stolen from cult salaries that regularly disappears into a group of 20 stars being used in alternating sequence. By following the coordinates of this group of stars, it is possible to draw a Mayflower. We further learn that Mayflower is the name of a constellation in a different part of the sky. A part of the sky in the area of the constellation of the Mayflower was collapsed and formed the sumidero. April. Time personnel, local time offenders. The manipulation of time in our areas is apparently cause of concern and under scrutiny. 1. 2. It appears that local star charts could be under siege. A star child is a volunteer trained to nurture a star back to health, especially when its well-being has been compromised by an attack. 3. Jesus' physical well-being. was compromised, but it was finally possible to facilitate his access to rehabilitating medical care. 4. We learned that Gladia, originally from the area of the constellation of the Mayflower, entered our area in search of her abducted husband. She has extensive family connections in the area of the Mayflower, which were trying to intimidate the abductor, who decided to hide in our planet when confronted with the threat of legal action. Now a big part of that area has collapsed into a sumidero. May. An escalation on the use of lasers was recorded during this month of May. 2. A connection surfaced that links Dr. Saturn to time personnel. June. We learned that there have been several cases of explosions where targets have been wired depicting a pattern. We thought that this was a local problem, but we have since learned that investigations are ongoing in other parts of the sky due to the same act of terror. Finally, during the month of June, it surfaced that there have been several explosions with patterns that were revealed false, apparently a copycat is on the loose. July. A peak in the virulence of the COVID epidemic is illustrated by the watermarks of lymphatic fluid that could be found in the streets all over the commercial district area. 2. Earth found itself in peril when fireflies seek reparation on account of a missile in their hull. Their area was affected by a missile on account of their attack on the planet's structural integrity. The situation was rather confusing, but it has since been rectified. August. It is alleged that about 1 million wizards went missing while attending a prominent banquet. I find it unlikely that there are that many wizards in our planet, but that is the way I was reported during the month of August. That is the way it was reported during this month of August. On further investigation, this revealed to be just a stunt towards electioneering. September. The old empire was invaded by representatives from the local Hamish community. This proved to be a distraction from attacks that were unleashed on magnetic centers in several sections of our sky, trying to secure their collapse. Soldier ants communities defended effectively. Attackers suffered heavy losses, especially when they tried to destabilize our area of the sky by collapsing the lion den that have been so far concealed from the rest of the sky. It should be noted that we are consistently dealing with the same wrongdoers. October. Alistar is revealed with compelling influence in our area. It unleashed several attacks against the old empire during October. A strong link to Janus is revealed in the book The Currents of Space. November. A clue surfaced regarding the death of Borgia's daughter, Nora. It relates to the lack of response of the military personnel assigned to her security. A person named Murphy lobbied effectively towards securing this inertia. The connection to the space community hinges on the community of bees that have settled and expanded under the Mediterranean Sea and their capacity to influence communities in that area. Evidence of woman trafficking centralized at times were followed through and discouraged. It surfaced that several stakeholders in the area were being impersonated in conducting this illegal trade. I refer you to section on Salvo Jardín regarding the issue of mispersonations. Impersonations, yes. Finally, December, Creon's new water hole in the area of Santon opened with a jerk, with a controversial sculpture almost resulting in war when breaking. A saga involving the space shuttle surface over La Mancha. Further attempts to collapse the area of the Mayflower led me to the suspicion of something there that is worth finding. I concluded it had to be financial records, but apparently it's a repository of banknotes from all over Europe. I failed to understand the significance of storing all those banknotes. Considering that they age, they are prone to deteriorate, they can be replaced by new ones, by new editions, etc. I realized currencies vary in different parts of the sky. What is of the essence is a definite threat to the integrity of our extended sky. A target date has been set 2 months from now, when they will attempt to collapse our extended sky. In the meanwhile, they have taken all our furniture. Sorry, I need a moment. I realize currencies vary in different parts of the sky. No, we have standardized since that report. What is of the essence is a definite threat to the integrity of our extended sky. A target date has been set 2 months from now, when they will attempt to collapse our extended sky. In the meanwhile, they are busy evacuating their people. I'm sorry about that glitch. In conclusion, what could make us one big family is the realization that our hopes to overcome the challenges that confront us lays in our capacity to acknowledge our common destiny and hinges on the fact that we share a common home, and our commitment to rise above our challenges depend on our capacity to cooperate with each other and in our ability to learn how to stand up and fight for our futures and for each other's futures. That was my closing paragraph last year, but still holds. Please be mindful of the integrities of your areas, especially during the next 2 months. I look forward to reconnect with you all this time next year. Have a good year. This is Nora Rasenti. Nora Rasenti's guidelines, Healing a Tear in the Sky, June 5th, year 2022. First of all, a warning. It is imperative to acknowledge the danger inherent to the proximity to black holes or sumideros. Remember, it will pull in whatever is close to it and destroy it. Remember also, you don't have to be on top of the problem to be able to deploy the procedure to improve and heal. Proximity is not necessary. The procedure should affect the area around the tear, not the tear itself. When the area around the tear heals, the tear closes. It is advisable to engage those experienced with the procedure if you are able. 1. First of all, it is advisable to change the polarity of the charges in the area surrounding the black hole. The use of salt has proven beneficiary, promoting humidity, which is what is required. B. Ionizadors or humidifiers are appliances that can accomplish this change of polarity. Some people make use of whales to change the polarity of the charges in the air. A whale is able to do that without engaging in chemicals. There are, I'm sure, other species that will be able to do this if they were trained and somebody showed them how to get it done. 2. Regardless as to whether you use salt or a whale or an appliance to change the charges in the air, or even whether you use all of them, one after the other, depending on the seriousness of the tear and on the resources available to you. The steps above should stabilize the tear to the point that it stops attracting and destroying everything around it. You can see that the problem becomes smaller and that the black hole stops pulling things in. 3. It is critical at that stage to monitor the quantity of moisture in the air and advisable to wait until it dries prior to proceeding to point 4. Deploying an electric current when the air is full of moisture could be lethal to those in the area that could end up electrocuted. The tear in the sky contains a spiritual residual of the star that caused the black hole when exploding. It is imperative to encourage that soul, the soul of the star, to come out into the open. As I said before, that soul is expected to be traumatized for the fact that it was attacked and destroyed the body of the star. It is imperative because otherwise that soul is trapped and it does not let the tear heal. But if you call it out, it is receptive and it could restore eventually. This is a worthwhile endeavor. It is the main reason that a star child has been trained. I do not want to tell you something that may not be 100% accurate, but I believe that the star child movement was initiated over 2,000 years ago on occasion of the nativity star of Belen, passing through our area of the sky. 4. An electric current will repair the tear in the sky. An electric current will actually heal the problem when combined with pulling out the soul of the star from the hole. How do you deploy an electric current? There are devices that can generate and or store electricity. Some of them are called zinc cells. Or you can ask the wave to assist you in changing the charges in the air to the point of electricity. You can even tap the power of lightning, and that would fix the problem. Point 1 and 2 above should slow down the progression of the black hole or sumidero, and points 3 and 4 would get the tear to close down. We are grateful to the whales for their unselfish and invaluable contribution in this matter. I am not in any way diminishing the contribution of earlier efforts towards fixing this problem, but I believe my contribution of electricity brings a permanent solution. It is also inspiring that the contribution of the ionized current managed to stabilize the sky and make possible for us to maintain the situation to today without a catastrophe.